Okay, recording.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Harvey Sluggo Wasserman here. This is our eighth. Is this our eighth or ninth? It's the ninth meeting of the COVID Emergency Response Group for Election Protection. And we have a lot going on. We're going to talk today about the marches, about ballot imaging in North Carolina, and then about North Carolina in general. If Bob Fitrakis joins us, he's going to talk about Ohio. Steve Rosenfeld will join us later to give us some updates. There have been some primaries, and there's some primaries coming up. He's got a lot of information on that. Mimi Kennedy is going to revisit with the surrender rule. And then we want to talk about the possibility of doing two national YouTubes, one to go through the three basic issues. We call it the election protection trinity, except in Nevada, where it's called the election protection trifecta. And then we also want to talk about a possibility of a national YouTube that'll be state by state. So let's jump right in. Avelia Jones, are you with us? Avelia? She emailed me, but she...
Yes.
All right, Avelia Jones had a world-changing idea. Avelia, by the way, is the direct descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. And Avelia and I wrote a piece about it in the Los Angeles Times. If you write me, I'll send you the link. It's a great piece, and Avelia is a great woman. So we were talking. She's also on the board with me of the local station, the KPFK station, Pacifica, here in Los Angeles. But Avelia, tell us your idea.
All right, can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah. Can you turn on your video?
Can we see you?
Well, no, because I'm just too beautiful today to turn on the video.
Okay.
All right. But I called a couple of days ago, Harvey in particular, because here where I live in Los Angeles, I'm right in the middle of all these protests and rallies. I'm what we call mid-Wilshire. I'm near the big art museum. I have seen about 10 rallies and marches just out of my bedroom window. So here's my question, and here was my question to Harvey. How is it that we are missing thousands of people who are going back and forth, up and down the streets, exhausted, but looking for information, want to know what they can do, young, old, all descriptions, just people. I stood there many times with my camera, but I dare not touch them. It's COVID-19. There are a lot of things you don't want to do, but we're missing them. And here comes this election that I'm worried about, where the last time the young people said to me, why should I vote? It doesn't matter. It's going to be all whacked anyhow. Okay, those kinds of attitudes, I breathe deeply and try to explain why. I'm from Mississippi after all. But beyond that, what are we going to do? We're missing these people. Many of them do not realize that they don't know the mechanics of voting now. They think they do. Here where I live, thousands of people over the age of 50, retired, most of us. And they don't realize that they can't just walk into these precincts, the little stations, and vote the way they used to. They thought they stopped the last time because there were just too many people and it was too hot. But their names weren't even on the list. So I'm looking at things like this. I'm looking forward to a landslide defeat of the president. That would be my birthday and all-time present. But I see some gaps here. For one thing, if they want links, if these young people want links, if not so young want links to how to do it this time, how to make sure their vote will be counted, what information do we have to give them? So I said, hey, Harvey, if I've got something in print that I can hand out, I'm willing to do it. I can get people that will do it. Where African Americans are, who are often, as I'm familiar with this, unaware of what the changes are or what they should do now. So, okay, I'm over talking it, but I'm worried.
Okay. So here's the basic idea. Everybody is where they are. This is not a national organizational thing, and thank you for that, Avery. It's terrific. Avery is a wonderful person, and I'm sorry we can't see you today, but you know, I had my hair done, so you know, I'm sure you look great too. So the point is, why don't we, as individual organizers in the various states, contact the people who are organizing these marches and see if we can't get voter registration and information tables at these marches. It would be a tremendous breakthrough. I have a piece about this. I sent the link to Paul, if you can post it, Paul, in the chat at Reader Supported News. That's rsn.org. And if you can contact the people, find out who they are, who are organizing the local rallies. Maybe we can get and maybe we can contact, since we're nonpartisan, both the Democrat and the Republican parties, get the voter registration materials that are necessary, and contact them and see if we can't. I know the marches have peaked, but maybe we can get a new round of marches that will combine the police brutality and racism issues with the mechanics of getting registered to vote and of protecting the vote. You know, there's these tens and, I mean, I don't have to tell you, these rallies were huge. Now, I talked with Joel Siegel earlier today, who's on the phone, about, Joel, can you give us an idea what you might be able to do in Charlotte to make the connection between election protection and these marches? Joel, you want to unmute? Hello? There you go.
Oh, good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
We're good. So Joel, can you and I talked, you said there were some groups in Charlotte that you could connect to that would possibly allow and work with us, or work with you, with the local group, to set up election protection and voter registration tables at these marches.
Yeah, that's correct. I'll talk about that very briefly. I just saw Jan Goodman, who I met when I was in Los Angeles. Hello, Jan. She just said we need to connect with other organizations, and I agree. So what we're doing in North Carolina is we got about 5 or 6 organizations who are in very serious discussion about how are we going to have a comprehensive voter registration, get out the vote, protect the vote, vote by mail, because it is an absolute mess. It's a mess, right? What we're going through. If we do not deal with it comprehensively in our swing states, the theft of democracy is going to be real. Look at what happened when Stacey Abrams ran. She lost because of voter purging. I really believe that's going to happen in all these different states if we're not careful. What we're doing here is the organizations that I'm in touch with in North Carolina and Charlotte, we're trying to find organizations in our city and see if we can get some people out to the marches, set up a table, you know, and register to vote. Now, in order to do that, you got to go to the registrar's office, and you just can't go register people to vote. It's an official process. So I'm relying on former Mayor Jennifer Roberts, who I think she's on the call, and other folks, so we can figure out, well, what are the steps that we're going to take? Some of the African-American led groups that we're working with, the chair of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg, you know, the Democrats said, no, you can't go door to door and get people to vote. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So yeah, it's not so easy, but anyway, that's what we're doing. But the idea of these, you know, a coalition coming together to do all these different tranches is key, and getting them funded, because every state has groups that are on the ground doing this, but the reason why we don't have anything like that yet is because we've really never done this before, except Obama campaign or whatever, some prior
Okay.
campaigns. Yeah.
So Jan Goodman has put in the text in the chat that one organization that's in touch with a lot of demonstration organizers is the National Lawyers Guild. Now, National Lawyers Guild, I believe, has chapters everywhere. But this is an idea, discussion for everybody working locally. This is not something we're going to do as a national organization. Mike Hirsch from PDA, take and share this democracy survey. If you're in a place where there's going to be a march, if you can reach out and contact the march organizers. Colette Alston, you're in North Carolina. I know you're really connected to a lot of really important organizations there. Maybe this is an idea that could resonate. Now, I have, as mentioned, a piece up at Reader Supported News. Paul has posted the link. You can take a look at it. And wherever you are, if you get wind that there's going to be a march, maybe contact the National Lawyers Guild. The LA County Democratic Party, Dorothy Reich says the LA CDP, I assume that's the LA California Democratic Party, will send young Dems to register people on their phones. But this is a connection we need to make. I mean, these marches, I don't have to tell you, have been spectacular. And we're missing, as Avelia says, we're missing an opportunity here. So anybody can do this. If anyone pipe in from a locale, but this is important, please spread the idea, okay?
So, Harvey?
Yes, Jan.
I think that one of the things that we should be thinking is trying to be a linkage. Like us as we stand, we're not, we're not a voter registration group. They're people, they're organizations that year in and year out, that's what they're focusing on is voter registration. And they're, they may or may not be thinking about registering people at these demos. And the people who are organizing the demos are, probably not thinking about registering people to vote. And so maybe one of the functions that we can do are actually, I'm thinking of two things. One is actually making that linkage and trying to connect up those two groups. Like if we, call the Lawyers Guild and call Southwest Voter Registration Project, or, I'm sure there's equivalent voter registration groups in many places, if not most places, and try to, as individuals, try to make those connections so that they can register people to vote. And the other thing that Avelia and I were talking about is maybe creating, one thing that we could do perhaps is to create little 3x5 size flyers. In other words, 8.5 by 11 cut up 8 ways, whatever that ends up being. And so it's, 4 by whatever. But with, preferably on bright pieces of paper, fluorescent orange or pink or whatever, blue, and that just say red, like secure your rights, register to vote, go to this link. And, Greg Pallas says registering online is the best way to do it because there's less likelihood to get screwed up.
One thing, Jan, one of the things we're looking at is the digital divide. If people were at these marches with laptops, they could, because a lot of people don't have, internet access, and they use the laptops at the marches to register people who don't otherwise have internet.
Well, that's possible, but I bet you, so many young people, they don't have anything else except a cell phone.
Right, and they can register on their cell phones.
And they can register on their cell phones. So if we have the link, I mean, it's not going to cover everybody. It's not going to cover the people who are staying home and not going to those demonstrations because they're, old like me, who are not going because of the health reasons. But the people who are out there, a very, very large percentage of them have cell phones. And if we give them the link that, you know, I've done this a million times, people would rather have a little teeny piece of paper like this size than an 8.5 by 11 anyway. And we just hand that out and it says, you know, some inflammatory-ish statement like, you know, like preserve your rights, or, you know, stop, you know, dump Trump, whatever, register to vote, here's the link. You know, if we were really clever, and there's probably somebody who could do this, we could put one of those, you know, little squares of little things that they just take a picture of it and it sends them straight to the link.
Dorothy says they're palm cards. We also want to get people not just to register, but to get active in the less than 5 months we have left to protect the election. I mean, that's important. So
Right, and probably 4 months to get people registered.
yes.
Hey,
Okay.
Harvey, we have a few questions coming in from Dorothy, Ruth, and Russell Green.
Okay, Dorothy, Ruth, and then Russell Green, please.
I was
Joel
just gonna
also has
say
his
that-
hand up.
that-
QR,
Yeah.
yes, QR
Let me-
code.
That here
Let
we
me-
got.
let me just say
getting,
one thing.
California young
All right, wait, Dorothy, let Joel go and then you. Go ahead, Joel. real quick.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay, I apologize, I thought you called on me, my bad. Colette already has the model, Alston. She's the most effective person in our state for registering people, especially in the African-American community. But I think I think she should be called on to talk about
Okay, that's good.
what's the
Okay,
model she used, yeah.
Dorothy, did you want to say something?
So I don't know how many other states have registration that you can do on your phone, but I would imagine other states do. And we need to find out what states allow you to register on your phone. And I don't know if we can do any kind of mass texting to people to text them to register on their phones. That might be possible.
Well, that would be, you know,
Andrea Miller knows more about that.
it would be amazing that at the rallies to have people walking around with like a vest or something and a phone that they could just register people. That would be truly.
Yeah, well, they don't. Yeah, that's what I asked the California Democratic Party to do. They don't need a vest. They just tap a guy on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you registered to vote? Let me show you how." You know.
Fantastic. Paul, who was next?
Sorry, Ruth Strauss.
Ruth? Ruth Strauss? All right, let's go to Russell. Russell Green.
Hello, friends. Good to see all of your faces.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, Sluggo.
Your face.
You know, I am going to offer maybe just a slightly different way of thinking about it, and perhaps suggest that although all of the ideas in terms of identifying the most effective ways of being able to register votes and how we can leverage this organizational reach or network's reach, very smart. But I would offer that we wait on taking any opportunity to diminish the focus in these demonstrations from the leaders of these demonstrations, and not co-opt in any aspect until it reaches the moment where there's space that emerges for that. I think doing it now is ill-advised, and instead we should stay completely unified in letting the Black Lives leaders lead this part of the movement and be ready. And I think the National Lawyers Guild, we have allies where there are allies, use our access and privilege to reach out and make ourselves available as a network that can offer expertise when they ask for it.
Thank you, Russell.
Okay, this is Ruth. I'm sorry, I was muted before.
All right, go ahead.
Just one quick thing. This isn't what I wanted to say, but I totally disagree with the previous person. People do need to get registered. They want to vote. They're very sophisticated. They all know that they need to vote, or most of them know that they need to vote, except maybe some, very young people. They also need to get, used to weighing in to their Congress people, et cetera, about this whole business of police unfunding and all of that. So there's no time like the present, and we don't have time to waste. That's my opinion.
So listen, we're not a unified organization that makes decisions like that. This is up to the local people.
Okay, I'm just putting an opinion out. Okay,
Yes, exactly. That's exactly
the real
right.
reason, Okay,
Russell's
the real
opinion
reason
is,
that wait, Harvey, I
Go ahead.
want to give Joel my phone number to text me his his mail because I have friends in North Carolina that I would like to have hook up with him. Okay.
okay, I'll put you two in touch. I've got your contact.
Thank you.
Okay, Russell, that was very well taken.
Okay.
My
Thanks.
suggestion is that people go directly to the leadership of Black Lives Matters and ask them when it's appropriate to jump in. I think your point's well taken, but I think we should move on it right away and ask the organizers of these marches if they're okay with that. I mean, that it seems to me they're starting to wind down, but that's not for me to say or any of us to say. So the answer is to go to the organizers, don't you think? Colette, in North Carolina, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I wanted to agree with the lady that just spoke. You know, at the end of the day, people are going out there protesting because they're angry. We want to see change. We want to affect change, but that effect on change, a lot of people don't understand how to do, and that's where we come in. That's where we come in and attach a voter registration form to what it means to vote for your mayor, who's attached to your police department, who's attached to your chief of police, and who can be attached to your sheriff and your DA by the time somebody gets arrested or they get killed. So we need to start making these connections with the momentum that we have with the groups that are out there. And we're starting to do that as a caucus here. We had our first one yesterday in an area called Ballantyne around here, Southeast Charlotte, or South Charlotte, I should say. And it seems to have gone very well. So we're using this time to affect the best change that we can with as many people as we can.
Well, that's great, Colette. I want to agree with both Russell and Ruth and you. I think we need to people need to tread delicately and not step on anybody's toes. That's 100% right. And but I do think it's probably a good time in your various locales, as Colette has done, to reach out to the people that are organizing these amazing marches and see if they're ready for people to register people to vote at them. What do you think, Russell?
I respect everybody's perspective, and they all make sense to me. I have offered mine as clearly as I can, and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I think you raise a really good point. I think everybody's pretty much on the same page. This is a local decision. And, you know, I probably would be very hesitant to jump into one of these marches without first talking to the organizers. That makes a lot of sense. But the idea is put out there. Thank you, Avelia. I think, you know, however we do it, we need to do it carefully, but the issue of registering people to vote and protecting the election, we'd be missing a huge opportunity if we didn't make the connection with these marches. And so however it works in your neighborhood, in your locale, that's on the table. Egberto, you had a long thing. Do you want to add in before we move ahead here? Egberto, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to say that I wanted to, you know, when I heard the piece earlier, it was as if a lot of folks don't know what they need to do as far as getting their vote in. And I wanted to use the power that we have, the several people, and use each person's sphere of influence to create videos and these other things that we just throw them out there. So it's sort of what I put in the message there. And, you know, maybe we get some group of us to kind of put that together. You, Harvey,
yes,
and some other things.
Absolutely. I'll work on you all with that. I think we need to have a video presence. Well, let's, excuse me. Let's use that to jump in. And then I want to talk with Colette, bring Colette in to talk about what's happening in North Carolina. But before, since this came up this way, before the talk, Paul and I were talking, we think it'd be advisable to do 2 YouTube town halls. One would be, I'm sorry, I'm dry here. One would be to deal with the 3 basic issues: the voter registration, 20 minutes, the vote by mail, 20 minutes, and then 20 minutes on counting the votes, so that we would have an educational YouTube town hall. and we would deal just with those basic issues. And then that'd be an hour, and then we'd have a half hour afterwards for questions. And then we'd have the document, and then we can produce something on paper to hand out at things like these rallies. And then the second town hall, which would come later, would be state-by-state reports. And we'd focus on the first 6. You know, we're doing a 666 overview here. I hate to have that, but, you know, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona are the first 6. And then we'd have reports from all of them, and then we go through, and that would be the second town hall. But the first town hall of dealing with registration, vote by mail, and counting, that we can do in a week or two. We'd move over to YouTube and make it a public thing. And so, Egberto, that segues exactly from what you're talking about. And of course, you have a show, so that's something we need to talk about. Does anybody want to jump in real quick with a quick comment on that idea? I would not want to do it on a Tuesday. I think we need to keep going with these meetings, which are interactive. There are restrictions on doing a YouTube town hall in terms of interaction. So we'd have to have straight presentations followed by a half-hour discussion. But I'd like to do that within the next 2 weeks. If anybody has further thoughts on that, email me, and we can get the dialogue, and we'll figure out when it will be best to do that. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, Harvey, quick point to clarify. It's we would use a Zoom webinar technology and then post it live on Facebook.
Okay.
I would like to reach out to Egberto Willies and others to have it simultaneously broadcast through various networks, like Politics Done Right can broadcast it to YouTube and other channels. So if others have broadcasting capabilities, you know, please let us know, and then we can coordinate it to try to get a little burst out to get this information picked up.
Yeah, so I have a show on Progressive Radio Network. Someone emailed me, a young woman who has a radio show, and I lost the note. If you're on, if you'll identify yourself,
Hey,
that would be
Devin,
great.
my brother.
And we'll make this
All right.
available also
What's that?
through Pacifica. Okay?
That was me, Lynn Feinerman, Women
Yes,
Rising
Lynn.
Radio.
What is your radio show?
No, I had not. Actually, I'm on a
Lynn Feinerman?
Yeah, Women Rising Radio. We did a program on election protection, and we featured Jennifer Cohn, who's very deeply into investigating the whole question of machines and who produces them and what they've been doing with that. And we also profiled Andrea Miller, who is, I think I read in one of these things on the group chat that they think she's a superstar. She's a fabulous organizer.
Yes, well, we've had her on, and we will have her on again. So that's out there now. We will do this town hall on interfaced with Facebook. It will not preempt this meeting. We'll figure out a time to do it. If you have any ideas on it further, please email me at solartopia@gmail, and we'll move ahead with it. And
we can live stream it. We can
What's
live
that?
stream. Women Rising Radio can live stream it.
That would be wonderful. So put up in the chat room, please, your contacts. And anybody else has any ideas like that, let's move ahead with it. Okay, that's great. All right, Colette, we want to go to the States now. Colette in North Carolina, and all the other folks from North Carolina. Can you tell us what's going on there, please?
When you say what's going on, that's kind of broad. I can speak from a.
But with the election.
As far as any elections go, I haven't heard anything per se. I think Mayor Roberts is on the phone for that. We've been, as a caucus, really just making sure that everybody across the state, especially those that are in Black densely populated, democratically registered neighborhoods, are organized. So we're working, through a county party structure or a state party structure to make sure we're affecting change across the state when it comes to the Black vote. So as far as any elections are concerned or what may be going on in the polls, this particular organization has not been concentrating on that. We're trying to concentrate on getting to the people across the state to make sure they get out to vote.
Well, Colette, I understand that the march there was, in the last couple of days, was attacked by the police. So I assume they're going to go out and march again. What do you think of the possibilities of connecting with the next march to do the voter registration and election protection stuff?
We have a couple coming up. There was a pretty bad situation here last Tuesday where a few of our peaceful protesters here in Charlotte were actually cornered and tear gassed and hit with those rubber bullets for absolutely no reason. There's protests going on about that. So we basically have protests going on within protests here in the Charlotte area. So yeah, we have one going on tonight with the NAACP. We usually have our representation there from the caucus, either with forms in hand or we're able to vote or register to vote online here as well. So we can just shoot those between phones and texts as we're talking to people, as we're marching with people. So yeah, we're setting up to work with like organizations like the NAACP to be sure we're at hand as they're organizing these events and making sure people get registered to vote.
So you will be registering the people to vote at the next march? Will you be using your phones?
We can use phones and we can use forms. So we can hand out forms and we can send links from our phone, text links, email links, however people want it done, where you don't even have to touch each other.
Wow, that's fantastic. So can you give us, be sure if you can write up or certainly be available next week to give us a report on how that goes. That's a big deal.
Sure.
And you have a comfort level with the organizers of the march where they won't feel, as Russell has worried, that they won't feel impinged.
Right. We actually have relationships with a lot of the people already that are organizing these marches across the cities and the counties.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Jennifer Carius has suggested we bring in the League of Women Voters. What do we think about that? Do you have a League of Women Voters?
It's Harvey, it's actually a link called vote411.org. And what I like about it is, you know how people got kicked off voter registration lists in the hundreds of thousands? Well, on this link, they can register and check their status of voter registration and check everything on their ballot by their address so they can become educated and registered and check their active status. And it tries to cover the whole United States. So if you don't want people touching things, they could go not 411 vote, but vote411.org to see all that.
God, that's amazing.
It is. They're an amazing organization and they're one of our oldest.
So this is vote411.org and it's through the League of Women Voters, or is it separate?
The League of Women Voters made that, yeah.
Wow. Now there's also a group Dorothy mentioned, Vote Riders. Do we know Vote Riders? Okay, well, Dorothy, do you know more about that or did I misinterpret? Dorothy, you still with us?
Yeah, they have people all over. Andrea Mitchell's in touch with them. Remember, she said she was going to invite them to participate. They have been going around making sure that people have the correct documentation to get their ballots.
This is Vote Riders.
It's a play on voter ID. Voter ID, Vote Riders. VOTERIDERS.
All right.
And Jan's in touch with them also because we had a fundraiser at Jan's house for them, right, Jan? So
yes, yes. Vote Riders. It's. I told you about that organization. The person is Kathleen Unger, I believe it is her.
All right. So do me a favor, everyone on the call. If you have an organization that we should be in touch with, email me with the details, and I'll put them all together, and I'll give them to Paul, and we'll send them to everybody. Okay? All the different organizations that you think might be helpful. This is great. My mother was in the League of Women Voters. It never occurred to me that we should contact them. It would be a great organization to do. And
they used to run everything before the Democratic and Republican parties took over.
Yes, exactly. Well, hopefully they'll take over when we establish the matriarchy and get rid of this misogynistic nightmare. Colette, if you could sort of send us a a short piece on how it goes at the rally with registering people then when people in the various locales go to the organizers of their demonstrations, we'll have something to show about how it worked well in Charlotte. That would be very helpful.
That sounds fantastic. And we actually have members within our caucus that are part of the League of Women Voters as well. So I'll reach out to them and see how we can connect with anything they may have going on here locally as well.
Fantastic. That's great. And Mike and Mike Hirsch and Alan Minsky from PDA, this is probably stuff that you could use, yeah? I mean, you got people all over the country. If you can interface with the next round of marches, and we have this experience to point to in North Carolina, what do you think, Alan? Would that be helpful?
Well, the people we have out across the country, and I spoke to you yesterday, Harvey, of the 7 states that I'm including Ohio, which of course is an old base of yours. And I know Bob Petrakis is on the call. You know, we have people in all 7 states, so the 6 swing states. I mean, of course, I do understand the logic of focusing on the 6 swing states. That's to concentrate on the presidential election. Of course, there's elections in states all across the country where the kind of right-wing shenanigans and election suppression are going to go on. But in the 7 states in question, we have good people in all 7 states that can help anchor the efforts. Obviously, in North Carolina, Joel and PDA is there already coordinated with people. But obviously, the North Carolina activity that was just described is not anything that I've known to be organized in any of the other 6 states.
Right. So you're great people, and everywhere. Of course, we got a Senate race in Kentucky, another one in South Carolina. I mean, outside of the big 6 or 7 for the presidency, there are very important races: Montana, North New Mexico, Kansas. So yeah. So if we can get this mode going and segue in to these marches, it will be a game changer.
I mean, just to give an example too, we right now have a candidate running in Northern, who's actually running for Congress as the challenger to a moderate Democrat, very conservative Democrat, Tom O'Halloran. And the challenger, Ava, is an old PDAer. And of course, this is Arizona congressional district that includes the large geography of, territories which have Navajo communities. And these are communities that will be, will have a hard time working in a vote by mail process. But Ava in her candidacy has done a lot of work to try to get people registered up in that region in Arizona. So right in there, we really can network directly into that project through that campaign. And yeah, we can set out doing that. Now it's a very different context than registering people at demonstrations, but yeah, we have networks around the country that can support this. Of the 7 states in question, Michigan is probably the weakest of the 7 for us, but we certainly know a lot of people, and as I'm sure many people on the call do, in greater Detroit, who can supplement the efforts of PDAers in Michigan as well.
Yeah, and in Michigan, by the way, if anybody has a connection to Michael Moore, I watched him interviewed, and he's very focused on the election. If we can get to Michael Moore and get him active just in Michigan, and remember, we don't want to just register people. We want people working on these 3 issues to protect the election. Thank you, Alan, for that. That's great. Joel,
we have a few hands up. Ray,
okay,
Justin,
Ray,
and Sally.
Sorry. Ray who? Ray, go ahead.
It's Justin LeBlanc and Sally.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that, I've done a lot of voter registration. You do have the right on the city streets to register people, even though, maybe it's courteous to try to get with the organizers. You don't have to. You can voter register even in malls. The Pruneyard case, federal Supreme Court case, allows you to register voters in any mall. And you just ask them, and they usually give you a table. Now, the malls are shut down, but you have the right, unlike almost anything else, you can set up almost anywhere to register voters, and you have a right to do so. and no one can stop you almost doing that. That's what they
All
tried
right.
to arrest me for, and they got caught with the false arrest.
I think Russell's point was we don't want to step on people's toes politically, but that's an important thing to know. Justin?
I'm here.
Yeah,
The question I had is actually something that is peripheral to what we're all talking about, but I think I'd like some time at the end, maybe 30 seconds.
Sally?
Yeah, I just looked up votewriters.org, and they even will print up copies of ID for you if you need ID to register for either to ask permission to get an absentee ballot or to send it in with your absentee ballot. And they tell which states need it and all. So it's another site to definitely use in the list of what we're suggesting to people.
Great. Okay, if you'll send that to me, email me the contacts, and we'll develop an ongoing list. That'll be very helpful. Okay. I want to get a quick report from Bob Fitrakis. Bob, you're on the phone. Bob, are you there?
Harvey.
Yeah, there were some new developments, Bob, in what the legislature is doing, and you mentioned one shocking situation about provisional ballots to me. Can you talk about that?
Well, those of you who followed the primary, unless if you had the wrong ballot, which many people did, if you were sent a Republican ballot and you were a lifelong Dem who voted for Bernie, which we had some of those cases, they went down to vote provisionally. You could only vote provisionally, and no one knew this was part of the state law, if you were disabled or homeless. So
let's repeat that. If you went down and to the voting station, and you had to have a provisional ballot for whatever reason, they told you you couldn't.
You had to have proof you were disabled or homeless.
Unbelievable. I mean, I hope people understand.
There was like 10,000 provisional votes that weren't counted, and half of those were people. And again, they had wrong ballots. I mean, they were sent. They swear that they asked for a Democratic ballot, and they ended up with a Republican ballot, but you weren't allowed to go down and vote with that ballot. You know,
unbelievable. It's really. I mean, Ohio. That's why Ohio is not in the top 6. I mean, they have just done everything they possibly can to prevent people from voting. I mean, the idea that you had to get, we're not even sure. Someone told me they thought a certain percentage of provisional ballots do get counted. But the idea in the state of Ohio that you could go down and be qualified for a provisional ballot with that you had gotten the wrong ballot in the party primaries, you go in, you show them the wrong ballot that you got, you ask for a provisional, and they tell you that unless you're homeless or disabled, you can't get a provisional. Right? Is that what they said?
That's what they said, and it turned out to be part of the state election code, which, again, we've got to read, and they're now changing it again in Ohio. There will be no early voting, particularly souls to the polls, because they're worried about the pandemic. And now, 10 days in advance, you've got to ask for an application to get a ballot. So they've really stretched that. It used to be as long as you asked by the Saturday before the primary election. Now they're moving it up 10 days.
God, it's amazing. I mean, and I'm sure that the other Republican legislatures in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, they're all doing stuff like that. Although we did talk last week about a bill in North Carolina. John, thank you, Bob. Is there anything, did they finally get the ballots counted from the primary?
Yeah, this I think we talked about last time. From the night, from voting day till 30 days when it was required, 13.8% of the ballots went uncounted, which I think poses a variety of problems. because people were calling elections even though 13.8% of the ballots were out. And then on the 30th day required by law, all of those 13.8%, 199,000 uncounted regular ballots and 44,000 provisional ballots were all counted at the very last moment, 30 days, exactly 30 days. And then they took off how to count, their little thing that allowed you to calculate where the ballots weren't counted, then disappeared at the Secretary of State's office. So for 30 days, they left the ballot uncounted while it was constantly being renewed. So we would watch every 3 minutes you could go in, and the ballots were never renewed to the 30th day. So 13.8% of all ballots sat there. And that's virtually every statewide election in Ohio would have been called with a huge margin of error remaining.
This is stuff that you get in a failed state. I mean, Bob has come from El Salvador to Ohio, and it's pretty much the same game. We don't yet have the death squads. That will come in the second term. Anything else from Ohio, Bob?
No, that's indicative of a failed Democratic Party. I mean, where the hell are the Democrats in challenging this? They drive 16 to 17 billion people off the voter rolls, and the Democrats have been sitting on their hands for 20 years. I mean, what the hell is up with that?
Well, it's real clear. There was a battle going on between the actually progressive forces, some from the PDA, and the Bernie forces over the party in the major areas, particularly in Franklin County, the largest county where Columbus is. And it appears that some of the targeting was to make sure they didn't control the Central Committee in the Capitol, that they were using voter suppression tactics against the Burners and against the progressives.
Yeah, that's what's been happening. I also want to ask you, Bob, we are, and Emily, Bob is the publisher of freepress.org. And I don't know if Steve Caruso is on the call, but we are accepting at freepress.org. You can mail them to me or you can mail them to Steve Caruso email, any articles that you want posted. And Emily, you have your website. Are people okay to send articles to you, links to be posted as scrutineers? Emily Levy, are you still on? Emily Levy? No, okay, so.
This is Emily Levy.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
So
I'm having some internet connectivity problems, so.
Okay, so
you're a little
the
choppy.
question is, Bob is the publisher of freepress.org, and they are accepting through him and through Steve Caruso, or you can send me, if you have a link that you want to be available, generally available, you can go to freepress.org, and there is an election protection portal. And so people can go there and see what's lately been posted on the internet. And Paul, I think you're setting something up too, is that right?
Where am I?
You're there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. You asked me a question and didn't give me a chance to respond.
Okay, you let Paul finish and then you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily, yeah. We have the COVID-19 Emergency Response Group webpage, and we're establishing a voting rights in the time of COVID component to that. That should be up this week. So I'll send the link around right now in the chat. Thanks, Harvey.
Good. So we have thank you. We have 3 places now where links can be posted, and they are at freepress.org. You can send those to me. You can send them to Paul. And now, Emily, what about your situation?
So people who are in scrutineers can post whatever they want there that's related to election protection.
And it's at scrutineers.org.
Yes. It's a membership organization, and members can post articles or pieces of information they think are important, and we can move some of those to our resources section if we think that people are going to want to refer to them again and again.
Okay. All right. So we have 3 spots now where you can go to check all the latest postings on election protection. Freepress.org, with Paul and at scrutineers.
Hello?
Okay? That takes care of that. Mimi
like
Kennedy
to-
has to leave. Were you trying to say something else, Emily?
No, it's Lynn Feinerman. I just
Yes.
wanted to say a couple of things. I can get in line. I mean, I'm not, you know.
Okay, well, Mimi Kennedy has to go, and she wants to talk about, real quickly, about the surrender rule, but also, Mimi, you have a handout card that you wanted to talk about?
Mute. Okay, I'm unmuted, right? You can hear
Yes,
me?
you're good.
Okay. I'm going to ask to share screen, but host disabled attendee screen sharing.
I will fix that now. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
It should work now.
Okay, can you see this?
Not yet.
Okay, let me see if I can do it. This is, as we were talking about stuff, I wanted to make sure, okay, I can see that you can just see my desktop. I'm really sorry. Okay. I think we should have a handout card, and what it should say, I'd really like to share it with you, but it's basically the mechanics of the voting process, call it something like MVP. Check your registration, and we'd have the QR code there for vote 411. Take time, date, take and time date a screenshot of your registration. Google how to take a screenshot with my phone. 3, if you're not on the rolls, register. And then again, 411.org. If you want to vote by mail, apply, know when to expect to receive the ballot. 5, if you were issued a mail ballot but voted polls, you must bring that unused ballot to surrender in return for a regular ballot. Without it, you'll vote provisional. Provisional votes are counted last. That is, you know, we could do it at PDA, I'm sure, but it's basically just a template. People can print them out at home. I do think that they should be available somewhere. It would be great to text them to people, but that pretty much covers it. What Bob has talked about in Ohio is just the beginning. We've got people working 24/7 with a lot of money who are figuring out what to game and how to stop everybody who's marching from voting. So we start now. Registration, screenshot of registration, register if you're not there, know the mail ballot rules. That will really help, and it's the only thing I know of that will help. I'm sorry I can't screen share. I really wanted to show that because you could just
Well, we'll do it next week if we,
Yeah, Mimi, if you could email it to me, we can distribute it to the group. So
that's great. I'll just do
that.
that because I just think that the mechanics of voting, and I was going to do move, but I remember Philadelphia, so it's not move. Talk about co-optation, but you know, MVP, mechanics, voting procedures.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
That's what you had?
Because, well, I've done a lot of looking at the election code. As you know, I have wondered whether the surrender rule was applicable in every state. And from what I can read, although no one goes to it directly, it definitely applies. And I have asked Bob, I'm trying to find out who voting provisional in Ohio voted provisional because they were a mail ballot voter, but they didn't have the mail ballot to surrender. And we don't have that information yet, but I don't need to look at it forensically. I can anticipate it. And that's something that besides registering and time dating your screenshot of your registration so you can show it, I'm not sure to convince a poll worker, but it would certainly convince an organization that's going to look into some sort of pattern of disenfranchisement. That and knowing the mail ballot rules. Then and nationally, that is one message. So I'm excited about that. But
All
this
right.
rule pretty much applies. Okay, thanks, Harvey. And
Okay,
Thank you, Mimi.
Harvey, can
Yes.
I follow and say a couple of things? The first,
We have a line of like 6 people who have their hands up.
Oh.
So I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure we're.
Well,
I'll
leave time. We will get to everyone. I do have John Brakey on the phone, and John has 5 minutes on the voting machines that he did not get to last week, and so I want to squeeze that in, and then we'll get everybody's hand up. This has been really productive so far. What we really will develop here is Mimi will make that available, that card. And, you know, it's important when we register people that we don't just register them to vote, but we get them going to help protect the election. And so that's critical. We've talked about connecting with the marches. John Brakey, you've got 5 minutes to tell us, to finish up with the voting machines. John, you there?
Here I am. I had to push another button. I'm sorry.
Okay. Wow, look at you.
Anyway, to my friends in North Carolina, if you can see on the screen, you know, I spent a lot of time in North Carolina because of, I went in there because of the CD9 race. And then I just really fell in love with the state, wonderful people, and made great friends. We met some of the people on this call, like Jennifer and others in North Carolina, Lynn Bernstein, who's remarkable. And I want you to know, I went in there because of the iVotronics and what happened to the CD9 race when it came to ballot harvesting and stuffing. And I also do track condition reports. And when I did a track condition report, you know, I realized the 100 counties, I believe, that are there, and the total number in front of me, there was 27. If you look on the screen, what was red things there? Those were DREs, and those were iVotronics. And they were thrown out of Florida in 2007 because they were that bad. And you know, I just want to, I didn't realize this until about a week ago, but you know, when I was there that last trip, I worked all the counties, followed ES&S around. I did estimates for 28 counties, trying to get them informed, like what Dr. Spearman would say, you know, the NAACP there, he sits on a board, we work very closely. He said, you know, people come to me after I make a decision on a board, and they ask me, Dr. Spearman, how could you have made that decision? And he says, because you weren't here to get me informed. And that's what I do. Last night, this morning, I sent out 14 letters for the third time to the Board of Shelby Elections, okay? But before we go into that, I want to show you a remarkable next picture. This is what North Carolina looks like with DREs now, or ballot marking devices. Sadly, the biggest county in the state, it's a toss-up between Wake and Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg went with the ballot marking devices. I spent a lot of time with the election director in Mecklenburg, and I don't trust him. He is a character. He told me that if he could mail out a DRE to a voter, he would. And they spent probably $8 million more than they needed to replace an ink pen. But what I'm really proud to say is that by doing what Dr. Spearman said, we did inform people and we did change. And that's why being proactive is very key in the work that we do. And I also want to say that in right now in Tennessee, there was a court case last week, and Tennessee voters won in court to be able to get a hand-marked paper ballot to vote by mail in the upcoming elections. Because, you know, Tennessee is one of 16 states that are working as hard as they can to let you catch a virus by standing in line and making sure they can suppress. You know, Shelby County is not a county that I was interested in going into because it wasn't a swing state. I went into Shelby because of Benny Smith, who I've known for a long time. He was the man who found fraction magic. He is a remarkable person who's done an excellent job in Shelby County, even though he stands alone. But having what we and a lot of other activists have pulled together to stand behind him, that we are hopefully making a difference. And we will know in the next 24 hours, did we succeed like we did in Guilford County by saving $5.8 million and getting into good voting machines or not? And the reason I bring these things up is because you cannot believe the power you have if you engage. And that's what I'm about. And that's why I'm a big supporter of my good friend, Emily Levy, and what she's doing. We worked together for years. She started this group because of her strong specialty as an educator in elections and an organizer. And Emily has a video that she just shot, her and me, you know, explaining what we're trying to do in these states. Because, you know, I do want to get back into North Carolina.
What you're trying to do, John, is to get rid of the DRE machine.
I just want to announce that we're filing a lawsuit by the end of the week statewide, and we'll be ready to announce who our plaintiffs are, because we're still in negotiations, but there's some really high-profile, diverse people, and we're also interested in anybody else in Florida who thinks that they can add something to the lawsuit that we're doing there to protect ballot images. Anyway, I bet my 5 minutes is up, and I thank you.
That was terrific. So
I want to
you're
do a
suing
shout
in
out
Florida.
to Ken from Arizona, who's on the call, and I'm hoping that he's going to come to work with us and start being our state coordinator, working with me as well as I'm working in other states. Thank you.
That's in Arizona. In case
Yes.
anybody doesn't remember, a DRE is a direct recorded entry machine. It's a touchscreen machine. It's how they've been stealing elections in this country for the last 20 years. And that's why many of us embrace the vote by mail, because at least we get a paper ballot. And John has pioneered the ballot imaging devices. You showed a map of North Carolina, John. How many of the states, the counties, the 100 counties in North Carolina have ballot imaging to count the ballots by mail?
Well, you know, all except for Mecklenburg, they all have it. No, there's a couple of tiny counties that are still using the old M100, okay? But right now, it's about 85 to 90%, it looks like.
But Mecklenburg is a big county, and
It is, but they are still having to take the DRE with the ballot marking devices will give a summary result with a QR, with a barcode, and then the results below. Ray's system will read that stuff, okay? But that has to go into a digital scanner, and an image is created of that too, and that's very valuable because that's what we want, you know?
Okay, so listen, anybody with any technical questions about how your ballots are going to be counted in your state should contact John directly. John, if you'll put your contacts up in the chat.
I will right now.
You know, so John obviously has a mastery of the electronic tail end of the whole process. And as Stalin,
I have all 50 states figured out. Every so often, I just created a new one this weekend working with Emily, and it has all 50 states in it. It tells every county in the country that you can look it up. And then you can also tell if it's digital or not, because the verified voting calls any scanner an optical scanner, which they're not. An optical is a light coming down using Mark Sense technology, and a digital makes a picture. And that picture belongs to us. It's a public record.
Fantastic. So listen, as you're organizing,
that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. Voting is a secret process. Counting is a public process. We need our process back.
Well, you're 100% right. So listen, as people are organizing in their state, if you have any technical question at all about how the ballots are going to be counted and what kind of electronic machinery is involved in the process, contact John Brakey. And nobody knows more. He's worked with Emily Levy. We got a great lawyer with Chris Souter. That whole part of the process is all set up. So as you go in there and you fight it out in your state and you have questions about the electronics, contact John Brakey or me, and I'll put you guys in touch with each other. Okay.
And we have about 8 or 10 lawyers involved with us now, and in different states. And that's all due to the fact that Chris Sauter has been doing recounts since 1984, and he is well known all over the country. He's done every major election. So what an asset he has turned out to be for us in the election community. After 4 years, he sees the world like we do, not like he used to.
Okay, so that means that we also have legal help.
Oh.
So if you're in one of the swing states, if you're organizing, or if you're not, if you're in a different state, if you're organizing, you got problems with the electronic voting machines and questions about how it's going to be done, we have lawyers, and that's a whole new dimension. Do not be shy. John, as you can tell, is really enthusiastic about this work. Nobody knows more than he and Emily and the other people that are working together on this. Okay, we have one more report, and then we'll go to the questions. Steve Rosenfeld has just joined us. Steve, you wanted to jump in here with breaking developments. We do have some primaries to talk about, and you wanted to talk a bit about what Mimi said. Steve? Steve Rosenfeld? I know you're there.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Okay, go ahead.
Tomorrow, we're going to see the debut of new voting systems in Georgia and South Carolina. Before COVID, before civil unrest, this was the big deal. The introduction of the BMDs, ES&S machines in South Carolina, Dominion machines in Georgia. So even though the turnout will be low in in-person places, we still have to watch what is happening there. I was told in South Carolina by somebody who's an election commissioner there today, they were sent special printers to help assist printing out ballots because they don't have e-poll books there. They were printing the wrong barcodes. This was by John's friends from Printellect. I won't can hear John laughing now. Here's what else is happening. There appears to be this growing sense that the in-person voting options, even in these states that are shifting to voting by mail, are insufficient in a number of different ways. They're backing up with traffic. They can't handle the flow. And then when you get into the specifics, it's everything that Mimi is talking about. What's happening is these different states have different laws that allow you to either show up without a ballot and be checked in quickly or not. Show in with your ballot and turn it in or not. And sometimes I'm told in South Carolina, for example, if you go to register online for an absentee ballot, half the people did not realize they had to print out the application and send it in. That means they still will be eligible to vote in person, even though they screwed up applying for an absentee ballot, even though they thought they were. The people who apply for an absentee ballot the proper way, which was printing out an application and sending it in, if they don't get it, I was told they're not going to be allowed to vote tomorrow. I have to check out how that really will be, because in the system, and maybe they will insist that they have to get a provisional and they'll be given it or not. It's going to be a mess. Now, these are not 100% of the people. In states like Georgia, something like they say that 70, 80% of the people are voting by mail. But of those that will be in these in-person centers, there's going to be problems. And I'll just, there's other stuff I heard about, but basically none of the lawyers out there for the Democratic Party right now have filed any lawsuits about this key juncture point. When the voter who either does not get their ballot in the mail or gets it too late and is wondering where to turn it in, what they can do. States like South Carolina and Georgia, you can turn it into a county office, which are often the same buildings that have the police headquarters, but you can't turn it into a precinct. So just look for this stuff tomorrow when you hear reports.
And you'll give us a full report next week.
Well, I'm trying to find people who are telling me about this. If anybody has good contacts in Nevada, I'm still looking for them, because what's happening there is everybody in Clark County, which is Las Vegas, was mailed a ballot in the mail. But if they have to turn it in or vote in person, there are only going to be 2 voting sites, 2 or 3, according to this legal settlement. This is like having 100 voting poll sites in all of Las Vegas, in all of LA. It's a million people in person county with only 2 places to go, maybe 3. So anyway, that's it. But this is what's happening, is that every week we have another series of issues that are highlighted in these primaries and statewides. And, if you want to be optimistic, like I am, I will say, we can highlight them for what needs to be fixed. If you're a little more cynical or a little more seasoned, you might say, hey, we're getting glimpses of what we're going to face in the fall. But that's where we are.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Thank you, Steve. That's really, I don't know if it is what it is. There's a link from Phil Harvey here, www.headcount.org/organizations. Look at that link. I'll take a look and we'll resend all these contacts. Okay, we have 16 minutes left. Paul, you have a list of people. Can you just call on people one by one?
Yes, sure. The first person is Sally Castleman.
Sally, go ahead.
Oh, I already gave my input.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I posted it.
Thank you, Sally. Next is Danette Abbott-Wicker.
Danette, you with us? Okay, let's go to next.
She basically contacted, I think, was wanting to give a few groups that were
sorry.
follow.
Yeah, so there's Swing Left, Rock the Vote, which targets younger people, US Vote Foundation, the Campus Vote Project, Voto Latino, your local NAACP office, and nonprofit vote.
Fantastic. All right, can you send them all and we'll add them to the list. Thank you very much.
I'll email it to you, right?
Yes, and to Paul.
And to Paul. Okay, perfect.
Okay, good. Next.
Steve Kaiser.
I don't mean to be the dead horse. I keep talking about the Democratic Party and what they've done here. Is it just that if the Republicans control the state government, they can do what they want and driving people off of the voting rolls? And that's why we just sit back with 16, 17 million people driven off the rolls, and it's pointless for the Democratic Party to stand up and attack this?
We don't, we're not, as we're nonpartisan, we will say that it's hard to see, we're hard to see what the Democratic Party is doing. The Republican legislatures that were put in power at super majorities by the gerrymandering in 2010 are very active in dealing with the voter rights, and they seem to be doing their best in Democratic areas to prevent people from voting. It's not true. Republican areas. What's that?
Is the Democratic Party powerless? They're just rolling over because the Republicans control these state legislatures, so they've got no hope of doing something about driving off millions of people from this ballot. I would think the Democratic Party would be leading the charge, but for 20 years, they've just been completely absent, it seems.
Yes, I think you're right about that.
Okay, so what's up? Any thoughts elsewhere?
I don't know. If I could answer that, I'd get the Nobel Prize, or at least the Pulitzer Prize.
Well, thank you for your effort. Does anybody else have any thoughts about this, about the Democratic Party not doing anything?
All right, but wait, we have people in line, so if you'll put your hand up.
I don't know how to get in line. Okay.
Okay, who's next?
Jennifer, we'll come to you at the after Justin. Okay, so.
Okay, Justin, go ahead. Then
Ruth Strauss.
Yeah. Hi. Okay. So we obviously have, in my opinion, a criminal Supreme Court who are anti-small d Democratic, as witnessed in Wisconsin. My point is, where is the ACLU on all of this? Apparently in Wisconsin, there was a theory that making somebody fill out a ballot request online and mail it in was the equivalent of a poll tax. So my concern is not only that, but the fact that they had to apply for that in such a small time window that they didn't get their absentee ballots. So my basic question is, where's the ACLU when we need them?
Why don't you call them up and find out? We'll put them on the list, and you're 100% right. It is a poll tax, but so far, there's chaos being created. People have an interest in chaos, and wonderful to see the ACLU in on this. I don't know about it. If you can find out, or anybody involved with the ACLU, please let us know. Thank you, Ruth. I'd give more time, but we're running out. We got people in line. Next, Paul.
Robert Raven.
Yeah, hi. I've got a couple of things. First of all, on short term, we need to send out election registration information and vote by mail information to all national, state, and local progressive organizations so that they can send it out to their members. So we need to have some kind of thing that we can send out to everybody.
Yes, we'll develop that.
And then long term, we need nonpartisan civil servants running our elections because, as someone just said, I think Emily, Democrats are part of the problem too. So we need nonpartisan civil servants like the post office, and we need to have a paper trail so that everything's counted like you do at any organization.
Absolutely. I will say this, certainly in response to previous stuff, the Democrats are very good at voter suppression in the primaries, especially in 2016 and 2020. And the Republicans are more adept in the generals. We'll see how that goes. And one thing very quickly, this organization, or at least this call, and this group of activists will continue into 2022 because one of the things we desperately need are these nonpartisan commissions to do redistricting, where California is the model. I call it the Schwarzenegger model because Schwarzenegger actually put up $3 million of his own money to set up the nonpartisan election commissions that do the redistricting. And that's something that's continue after the fall election. Thank you very much, Robert. Next.
Gary Crane.
All right, Gary, be brief, and then Jennifer, right?
Okay, just can you hear me?
Yeah, be brief if you will.
Yeah, I'll try to. Number one, just a process thing to let everyone know that if they, the three dots on the right, they can click on that and save the whole chat for themselves.
Okay. Paul saves the chats too, so you can write Paul and get the chat.
And number two, I have some emails for some leaders at Black Lives Matter in case people want to get those from me. And I'm just Gary.
How do they contact you?
Gary at getcouragenow.org. Gary at getcouragenow.org. I'll put it in when I'm done. Also, if anybody, there's so many good ideas that have been thrown out. I'm wondering if anybody here has any entree to fair fight, because I'm sure they might appreciate some of these ideas, and they're pretty opaque. And I would myself love to get an entree to them. And number four, I just want, well, I've already mentioned to Mimi, it would be good to have a Google Doc of her 5 steps so people could maybe comment. And the last thing is, if anybody wants to hear an out-of-the-box solution to some of this problem, which is basically right now we're kind of seem to be only looking at a whack-a-mole strategy for dealing with Republican tactics. And I have, I think, a much more powerful strategy that should be used in addition to the whack-a-mole strategy. So I hope if anyone is looking for out-of-the-box solutions, they'll email me, and I'll put my email in now.
Thank you very much, Gary. Much appreciated. Oh, Jennifer? Jennifer Cohn?
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. So something that's really been striking me recently is that while everyone's promoting the vote by mail, a lot of voters are not receiving their mail ballots in the mailbox. And it was like something like 1 million voters in the state of Maryland didn't get them on time. I assume they mean on time to actually get them by election day. We know that there were 17,000 that weren't mailed out on time in LA County. And I'm extremely concerned. Georgia, huge problem. We're seeing huge problems with that. But unlike things like the actual vote tallies themselves, we don't really have a way to quantify these problems, which means that we can't use them for election challenges. And what's really frustrating is the voter protection hotline, which actually has some of this data, doesn't make its numbers public. So if anybody has access to people at the voter protection hotline, I would love to talk with them about possibly making their numbers public. And assuming that they don't want to do that, we need some other way to do this. And someone at Amazon a director at Amazon had reached out to me, and I'd pitched the idea to them, and they seemed interested, and then they weren't. So the best I can think of right now is to ask people to post it on social media when they have problems at the polls. And we need a massive sort of voter education campaign. So I was thinking we could combine, send out postcards that do a few things at once, or maybe we'd have different ones, but one telling people if they have problems to contact voter protection hotline, because I think a lot of people aren't actually aware of that.
Okay, if you could put up the number and how to get to the voter protection
Well,
hotline.
here, I actually have this tip card I created, and it's at the bottom. It's one section of it where it says report problems.
Okay, that was good.
And also though, I think I think this could be sent as a postcard. That's what I originally intended it to be, but it's a lot of information. So it might make sense just on the report problems for the remaining primaries to send out postcards, flyers or something, asking people to post it on Twitter, their problems, because a lot of local reporters look to Twitter to see what's happening at the polls, because election officials aren't necessarily going to be volunteering that information since it reflects poorly on them. And we need to know where voting machines are breaking down and where a huge problem, like that Steve mentioned, was these long lines at the polls, for example, in Georgia. We need to know what's causing it. I think it's actually looking like it may be largely a bottleneck due to electronic poll books, which have spiked since 2015. But information is going to be a huge, getting the right information to know how to respond to it appropriately is going to be a huge problem for us, or a huge challenge for us. And
You're right.
postcards to voters can maybe help.
Okay, thank you. And also hopefully our YouTube webinar will help. I think Lynn was waiting. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Harvey. I just have two things. Being that this is an incredibly many-headed hydra monster, and that we're talking about potential messes in every area, I think that maybe it would be better for PDA to focus, and for all of us who are who are working on this, to focus on swing states and to really mobilize ourselves for swing states. That's the first thing. The second thing that I'm concerned about, and I'm even more concerned because of what Jennifer said, is that given the problems with getting ballots at all to mail-in votes, what about focusing on swing states with regard to opening more polling places? And how can we do that? Could we work with the ACLU on that? Could we work with the National Lawyers Guild to force, before November, to force states to provide more polling places, because they cut an incredible number in Wisconsin, for example?
Yes, although one thing that you're 100% right, that should happen simultaneously. We really have to push vote by mail, and we don't even know if there's going to be a post office. They'll do their best to keep that down. So you're right.
Yeah, that's why the Rump and McConnell want to get rid of the post office and put it in their own hands because of the vote by mail. I mean, that's why they are urgent about that.
Yes, there were other issues, but you're 100% right about that. So, thank you, Lynn. Is there anyone else with a hand, Paul?
Yeah, we have Justin LeBlanc, and we have 3 others. So we only have
okay. Let's go. Left, so we got 3 minutes.
30 seconds each, I guess.
Make me last, Justin.
Okay, Ray.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to, after the session last time, Harvey, you asked me a question about what do you do if the things don't match. You can always look at the paper ballots. You can always by hand look at the ballot images and enter that into our system. Now we're going to be doing the work to figure out exactly what our opportunities are in these top swing states. Or I'll call on Tuesday at noon. We're going over that and the security of the ballot images and how to use the system. So anybody that wants to get into the weeds on technicality and just learn how this all goes, that'll be on Tuesday at noon.
Okay, if you post the link to that, that'd be great.
That's
in the chat. Who's next?
Justin.
Okay, Justin.
So this is something that is peripheral, incidental to all the things we've been talking about, but I think it actually is for such a time as this. And that is, while we have people out on the streets marching, we really should be giving them as much information as we can, but keep it simple. And so the proposition I had was, what can we actually tell people to do now? And that is march down to their elections offices and start making demands to change the system, to give themselves more rights. My particular proposal, which I'm open to discussion on, you can email me, justin.r.leblanc@hotmail.com, and I'll put it in the chat as well, is that we actually push for what we should have had back at the beginning of this country, and that is the right to nominate our candidates instead of just being stuck with what the parties are throwing at us. If we get that, then everything else solves itself, really, because we actually have representation. Failing that, we should at least get our elections officials elected. Failing that, we should at least get our registration systems watched. And failing that, we should at least monitor our voting machines.
Okay, thank you very much. That was terrific. We're at the end. Again, want to emphasize with these marches going on, we need to watch protocol, as Russell has said, and get cooperation with the march organizers. But these are huge opportunities. If we can segue these marches toward getting people registered, protecting vote by mail, and protecting the vote count, we have less than 5 months. until the election, and that would be a huge connection. I'm glad to hear from Colette and Joel in North Carolina that it's going to happen. It's happening there. That is a very big deal. These machines, if you have any questions, call John Brakey and Mimi with the various, with that handout. Extremely important. And it's another incredibly productive call. We rushed the fastest 90 minutes I know. And we will be following up with a Facebook webinar on the three big issues, the trinity or trifecta of election protection, and then with the state by states. Please, if you're, one thing that came out of this, Julie Levine, who couldn't be with us today, told me her sister is actually running for mayor of Miami-Dade in Florida and will be a big help to John's work and vice versa. So the connections we make here are extremely important. Thank you all. We're at 3:30. Thank you, Dr. Paul, Joel Siegel, Bob Fitrakis, everybody else, Mimi, Lynn, and we will continue with this great work next week. If you have anything you want to contact me about, it's solartopia@gmail.com. And God help us, let's have a free and fair election. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh.